Oh, hi. The average price per unit in King County last year was $152,000. That works out to $203 per square foot of net rentable area. We were curious how that fits in with what it costs developers to build new construction these days. So we looked at a little over a dozen new projects recently completed or in the planning stages. And we found that the construction costs, all in, hard and soft costs, including land and everything, range from $288 a square foot to $375 a square foot of net rentable area. And the median cost was $348 a square foot. So that just doesn't really seem to fit at all with what we're seeing on the sales side for prices overall. So we took a look at sales in a little more detail. This chart shows sales last year in King County and the price per square foot that they sold at based on their age. So you can see that properties built in the early 1980s sold for about $150 a square foot, whereas those built in the late 90s sold for around $200 a square foot. And getting into properties that are about 10 years old, they're selling for close to $225 a square foot. Now, if you just take this trend line and extend it out to get an idea of what new construction would sell for, that'll sort of give you a sense of trends. And so that's what we did here in this chart. And this shows that, again, the same thing, early 80s at $150 a foot, late 90s at about $200, and properties built in the last year or two around $250 a square foot. That's a lot less than what it actually costs developers to produce new product today. So how does that work? Well, it doesn't actually, but fortunately, this trend line hasn't held up very well in the last couple of years. In fact, the price per square foot on newer product has absolutely skyrocketed. This chart shows what really happened, and if you look at new properties that sold last year, that were just built in the last year or two, the prices are up over $400 a square foot. And so what we've seen is a very radical shift, and we'll get to sort of the reasons for that in a little bit. But when you look at sales last year for new construction, you'll see properties like the Seven Hills on Queen Anne or Prescott in Wallingford that are all selling above $400 a square foot. Now, depending on location, some properties and amenities and such, some properties are going to be less than that, maybe substantially less than that. But this is definitely the trend, certainly for the in-city Seattle market. Now, $400 a square foot for new construction and $150 a square foot for properties built in the early 80s, that's just sort of the trend line. You're going to see variations on that depending on the property's condition, location, amenities, and so on. In fact, you can take an older property and essentially make it new again. We've talked about that in past articles. If you look at, for example, the McKean that sold last year, that property was built in 1928, and yet it sold for over $400 a square foot. Similarly, Tower 801, built in 1969, also sold for over $400 a square foot. What's similar in these two properties is they've undergone extensive renovation, and so they are like new. Now, sometimes you can't renovate everything in. They may not have all of the amenities, design features that new construction has, but oftentimes they make up for that with old world charm or just spectacular location. And so what is old can be new again and sort of move up in this price range. Now, why have prices escalated so rapidly beyond what has been the normal trend line for so long? There are a number of factors, and we talked to developers about this. Tom Parsons at Holland Development basically said that one of the major factors is that apartments nowadays are really being built to condo quality standards, and a lot of additional amenities are going into the product that we hadn't seen before, particularly things like rooftop decks, but there's a lot beyond that as well. Then Jim Rivard at SRM also added another insight, basically that yes, we are adding a lot of new features and a lot of new quality is going into projects, but part of this sort of has to be done. There's a new consumer in the market today, the renter by choice. They can afford to own a home, but they prefer not to. But they are a lot more discerning as consumers, and they're looking for a lot higher quality than the typical renter has in the past. Then Kevin Wallace also added that another big factor today is sustainability and building projects in what he calls transit-rich, walkable neighborhoods. One of the byproducts of this that he's noticed in his developments is that some of his residents are choosing not to even own a car, saving a lot of money as a result because of the property's location in this transit-rich environment. Now, we've got a lot more comments from these developers as well as some other developers and architects on our website. In the article that accompanies this, the article is called "Can Investors Stomach the Cost of New Construction?" And so you can check that out there. We hope that you found this video useful, and we hope you'll come back next week to see another apartment market update on Friday morning.